June 4, 1942, dawn over the Central Pacific. The air hangs thick with diesel and salt, the low thrum of propellers slicing through a slate-gray sea. Aboard the Akagi, flagship of the Imperial Japanese Navy, Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo stands on the bridge, eyes narrowed against the first pale light. In his gloved hand, he clutches a folded signal sheet, intercepted American chatter, dismissed as routine. Far below, in the cipher room, Lieutenant Commander Minoru Genda pores over the latest decrypt from Station HYPO in Pearl Harbor, his face tightening as the impossible unfolds on the page. This moment, suspended between the hush of expectation and the roar of revelation, marks the fracture point of an empire's certainty. For months, Tokyo had planned Operation MI with surgical precision. 4 fleet carriers, 2 light carriers, 11 battleships, a screen of cruisers and destroyers, 236 ships in all, designed to lure the remnants of the Pacific Fleet into a trap and annihilate them west of Midway. Intelligence assured Nagumo that the Americans remained crippled, their carriers scattered, their codebooks secure. Yet at 5:30 the sky cracked open with the drone of dauntless dive bombers, and the myth of Japanese invincibility began to burn. The officers aboard Akagi had imagined America as a nation of soft merchants, its navy a paper tiger still licking wounds from Pearl Harbor. They carried in their minds the propaganda reels, decadent jazz, frivolous automobiles, a people too divided by race and region to muster coherent resistance. Genda himself had written in his diary only weeks earlier, "The enemy is spiritually exhausted. One decisive blow will end the war." What they met instead was a lattice of steel and intellect. Room 7 at Pearl Harbor, where Commander Joseph Rochefort and his team of cryptanalysts had spent the spring breaking JN-25, the Imperial Navy's operational code. By May 14th, they had confirmed the target. AF was Midway. By May 20th, they knew the date. By June 3rd, they watched the strike force depart the inland sea. The evidence lay in the machines themselves, rows of IBM tabulators humming beneath fluorescent lights, punch cards feeding through like rosary beads. Each card represented a fragment of intercepted traffic, call signs, grid coordinates, fuel states. Rochefort's team had logged 1-800 messages in April alone, mapping the Japanese order of battle with a clarity that stunned even Nimitz. A single test proved decisive. HYPO broadcast a false report of Midway's desalination plant failing. Within hours, Tokyo queried AF about water shortages. The trap was sprung. Yet the Japanese officers, steeped in Bushido and contempt for Western materialism, saw only coincidence. Captain Mitsuo Fuchida, recovering from appendicitis aboard Akagi, later recalled the moment the first bomb struck. "I felt the deck leap beneath me, and for the first time I understood that the enemy had read our mail." Expectation curdled into dread as the morning wore on. At 10:22, Akagi took the first direct hit. By 10:26, she was a pyre. Kaga followed at 10:24, Soryu at 10:25. 3 carriers lost in 6 minutes, an arithmetic of annihilation no samurai code had prepared them for. In the cipher room, Genda watched the codebooks burn, pages curling like black petals. He had once mocked American technology as soulless. Now the soulless machines had spoken with perfect grammar. The 4th carrier, Hiryu, struck back briefly, damaging Yorktown, but by dusk she too lay broken, her flight deck a sarcophagus of twisted steel. The transformation was immediate and irreversible. Nagumo, rescued from Akagi's bridge, stared at the horizon where his air groups had vanished and whispered to his chief of staff, "We have awakened a sleeping giant." The phrase would echo through Tokyo's war councils, but the deeper wound was philosophical. Japan had staked its honor on spiritual superiority. Midway revealed that spirit could be quantified, predicted, and destroyed by punch cards and vacuum tubes. Lieutenant Commander Chihaya Masataka, a staff officer aboard Yamato, later testified at the Tokyo trials. "When we learned the Americans had broken our code, it was as if the sun had set at noon. We fought on, but we no longer believed in victory." Throughout the battle, one object recurred in Japanese accounts, humble yet devastating: the American ration can. Salvage parties aboard the crippled Mikuma recovered dozens from sunken dauntlesses, Spam, peaches in heavy syrup, Hershey bars sealed in wax paper. To men sustained on rice balls and dried squid, the cans were talismans of a civilization that fed its warriors like princes. Ensign Takeshi Maeda, adrift on a raft after Hiryu sank, clutched a dented can of fruit cocktail and wept. Not for the sugar, but for what it implied. A nation so rich it could arm its pilots with dessert. The cans floated among the oil slicks like silver fish, each one a quiet sermon on abundance. In the Imperial Navy's after-action reports, the phrase enemy material superiority appeared 37 times. In private diaries, the word democracy began to surface, edged with fear. By nightfall on June 7th, the sea was quiet again, littered with wreckage and the low cries of the dying. Midway's runways, pocked but intact, received the returning American aircraft. In Washington, Roosevelt received Nimitz's terse cable, Pearl Harbor avenged. Yet the true reckoning belonged to the Japanese officers who survived, men like Genda, who would spend the rest of the war haunted by the image of punch cards clicking like a bocce counting down an empire. The code-breaking machines had not merely predicted the battle. They had rewritten the story Japan told itself about destiny. In the end, the Pacific became a graveyard of illusions. The samurai sword, once the soul of the warrior, rusted beside the IBM tabulator, its circuits still warm. From the ashes of Midway rose a new understanding, that freedom is not merely the absence of chains, but the presence of surplus of thought, of food, of second chances. The cans of peaches drifted eastward on the current, carried by the same trade winds that once bore spice and silk. They carried also a message no cipher could conceal. A people who can feed their fighters with sweetness will fight with a lightness no austerity can match. And in that lightness lies the terrible democratic beauty of a nation that refuses to run out of hope.